We just lost one of the great icons of the wine world, Dennis Overstreet, commonly known as the wine merchant of Beverly Hills. He's responsible for so many things that happened in our industry during the 70s, not the least of which is helping Thomas Keller with the famed restaurant, the French Laundry, or being originally financed by Dan and Roman Martin of Laugh-In. I mean, it's an amazing history, and here's the conversation. This episode is sponsored by the California Wine Club, where a wine adventure that seeks the small boutique wineries throughout California, a club for every budget and level of wine lover. Visit www.cawineclub.com. That's www.cawineclub.com to join or to give a thoughtful gift to the wine lover on your list. Use the promo code PAULK, P-A-U-L-K, for 10% off your first order. So here we go.
Now, from high atop his desk, get ready to peel it all back and get to the root of the subject. No pun intended. With Paul K. on Wine Talks, where he takes no prisoners and calls it the way he sees it.
Hey, welcome to Wine Talks with Paul K. And we are on location today in Beverly Hills. We'll get to the introductions in just a second. Wine Talks is, of course, available on Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Apple Play, wherever you hang out for your podcast, and always sponsored by the original Wine of the Month Club, where you can get Bordeaux series, Napa series, and the Sweet series. But we are, I'm going to call this graced with the presence of wine retail royalty. How's that sound, Dennis?
Paul, let me start off by saying what an absolute delight it is to spend a little bit of time with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for taking the invitation. And we tried to do this on Zoom, and we both decided that it deserved, in-person conversation, some laughs and some talks about the old days and some conversations.
And there's absolute magic of being next to you here.
Oh, yeah.
Within that, it's like trying to talk. I don't know how you talk about wine without participating and consuming it.
You're right. And this is a good point.
I hate reading tasting notes. I wanted to be there tasting and having that magic.
I think that's a really good place to start. Besides being the 5-star, the best wine retailer in the United States in 2006 and all the things we're going to talk about the past, but tasting wine live and the communication that's required and the relationship that's built makes wine different than any other beverage. But you have a story.
It's magical.
It's magical.
It's magical.
Right?
I mean, yeah, you feel it. And I mean, honestly, there's personality-wise in history and all that, no one greater than Jesus Christ. And he had a choice.
That's true.
He could have turned water into Coca-Cola and we'd be going to Atlanta, or pineapple juice and we'd be going to Hawaii, but wine.
Your wisdom is
magic.
off the charts. I got to tell you that because I've never
just magical. So you've got to love that.
Well, I have to tell you something. I calculated for my old pastor in Sierra Madre the amount of people. I don't know. What do you guys use here for a formula? If somebody says, Dennis, I'm getting married tomorrow, how much wine do I need for 100 people? What's your formula? Do you remember?
Well, I size up their pocketbook and then,
yeah,
and I kind of judge that because I'm in a cult
how
business.
How much you got?
Yes. Let's see if that Black American Express card, we can really kind of do something with it here.
Well, all right, I'll let me back up a little bit. I use 4 people to a bottle.
Okay.
So if you use that calculation.
But if you had a lot better wine, I'm going to assure you right now, we've already quaffed away a bottle of
that's true,
Krug
between 2 people.
For 2.
Yeah.
And so can you imagine if it was a celebration that was going to last?
That's funny because my daughter got married 3 weeks ago. I poured a Louis Jadot Bon French.
Very nice wine.
Great wine for a wedding, right?
I mean, you must have been very anxious to see someone else take responsibility for her.
Yes,
that was a
we were
celebration.
happy.
You brought out something to say, please, and understand that she's very spoiled.
We have it. And not only that, the Bordeaux was the Le Pagode de Casse, the second label of Casse d'Esternel. So
very nice wine.
It doubled the consumption that I usually would tell people to provide. So maybe you're right.
So throw that out the window. No, I'm only right with a matter of finances.
With the right. So that's what we pour.
No sense in emptying your cellar when you can drink someone else's.
That's right. Well, no, but don't you know? I mean, you know that when somebody's coming to the wine guy's house, and there's many wine guys like us around. Now, I don't have near the experience you have, but they expect something pretty interesting, don't they?
Of course. You know exactly. And the camaraderie ship just kind of pushes them right off over the edge.
So what is it about? And I there's no answer to this question because you said it already. Jesus could have turned the pineapple juice into Coca-Cola, whatever, wasn't even around then.
You take responsibility for that. I do not. I happen to speak candidly. Now that's yours. It's like your dollar. Well, okay. That is landed, and you're laughing. You take responsibility for that.
I'll say this. But what is it about wine? You said the bubbles go up in champagne, which I agree with you. This is a fascinating beverage, and I've made it part of my regular routine recently. But what is it about wine? What is it about the earth? What is it about what wine represents that is different than all the other things that we can drink? It's
more than magical. It's almost a religious type experience because it's something that you want to share. And it's more than mythical. It is something, a grape was a grape, but then it does have a rebirth into something that is very, very special. And it elevates to a higher level. And I cannot really, for my knowledge and profession, think of when you are talking to most people that are producing wine that they don't wish to really elevate it to the very highest that it can be. And it's a challenge with nature and everything else. And my God, I cannot imagine going somewhere and sitting down to someone that I don't even know and they have a Coca-Cola and me having a Coca-Cola and wanting to say, oh, I want you to try my Coca-Cola. I mean, wine says, point. Look at, boy, you got to really try this wine. And it's a complete stranger. And usually it's an attractive woman for my sake.
Well, good.
I would like you to try this. And it makes it a great introduction to
it sort of breaks down all
barriers
and emotional resistance,
and transcends all sorts of lines of occupations. You can be talking to someone that could be a rocket scientist, and they will be fascinated.
That's right.
Or you can talk to someone that is a simple farmer, and they will. And I don't mean simple because farming isn't that simple. You got to work with nature
but the
and
culture
God,
of farming is different than urban living, right? Let's just say that.
But still, it is something that you wish to share. I cannot imagine wanting to share a Coke or a glass of pineapple juice.
See, I've been saying that. The listeners are probably tired of hearing it, but you drink Jack Daniels because it tastes like Jack Daniels. There's nothing different between the Jack Daniels I'm having and you're having.
Correct.
But if you and I go to a wine bar or we go to a restaurant, you order a Bordeaux and I order a Burgundy, we're going to have a different experience, and we want to share that. Yes. And so I've yet to been able to identify what the grape does, what it brings to the table, and there's really just sort of theories as to why it's so special, but it does create an ambiance. And there's a cartoon I have in my office, and it was drawn from my father. We're going to get into the old days in a second, and it's the revolutionary times. There's a guy standing in front of the bar. He's the guard. And up comes Jefferson. He denies him entry. Up comes George Washington, denies him entry. Up comes one of the other, John Adams, denies him entry. And then Willie the wine merchant comes up. He goes, right on, Willie, come on in. Any of you guys got ID? So the wine guy was always welcome to the party.
Yes.
And you and I have this probably experience every day almost when we had a dinner party or the conversation, the one root conversation, the one it's not political. It doesn't deal with sexism. It doesn't deal with racism. It doesn't deal with any of those issues that we have today on the political table. But wine transcends all that. And we have this wonderful conversation about wine. What's the history? Tell me about this wine. What's with this grape? Where's it grown? All the stories we have. And doesn't that come from experience? Does it come from just the years?
I think it's a quest for something. I wanted to write about wine at one point, and I did a couple of books. And at some point, I came across a line from a Shakespearean play, and I said, I just give up right now because I'm going to paraphrase, but it was that you're given a goblet of water, and you see a reflection of your face. You're given a goblet of wine, and you get a reflection of your soul.
Wow.
So I said, I quit.
You can't.
I quit. What's said there, I will never try to.
What time do we open the store? That's all I'm the merchant.
That's it. I'm very happy now to go ahead and peddle the best that I can find.
I guess we just can't do better than some of the great playwrights of the world, right?
Yes.
So
you've got it there, Paul.
Let's go back to 1969, where, this is a brilliant idea. We're in Beverly Hills. You have this idea to open a retail store. What was your interest in wine prior to that, and what made you think that this was a good idea? Or was it a bad idea?
The truth of the lie, because the lie is going to be a lot more interesting.
All right, let's go with the lie then.
Well, somehow there was a war going on called Vietnam, and I just didn't feel very comfortable at trying to protect myself with a gun. So I decided that, since I'm not doing very well in college and my grades are failing, that meant I was going to be eligible. Mm-hmm. And the only way to really save myself was to find a woman that could produce children very quickly. So I said, that's not a good idea either. And so I took a summer job with Park Burnett. It was a little auction house over here in Los Angeles, and they were bought out by a company called Sotheby's.
Wow.
And I said, I was very happy there at Park Burnett because I thought, okay, I'm going to make some money. Mm-hmm. And they said, well, how would you like to go to London? And I thought, geez, I'm going to be I don't have to go to Canada.
What?
I'll go.
That's an automatic pass.
This part is true. I was put in an apartment so that we would sell at auction rare guns, because the thought was that Americans are in love with guns. And they put me there, and I thought, geez, this is what I wanted to get away from.
Wow.
And I had hair at the time, very long.
Yeah.
And
I made
I mucked that up real quick and made a lot of fuss. And they brought me into the main office, and as coincidence would be, the person that was running Sotheby's was Lord Westmoreland. And we had a general at the very same time in charge of that war in Vietnam called General Westmoreland. I thought, oh my God. How could this possibly have happened? And I knew I was fired.
Yeah.
And he was telling me to just plan on packing up and going back to the United States. And he brought out he had one of the butlers bring out a port, and he poured the glass of port for myself and then himself, and then he was going to let me know that's it. And as he put it to sip it, it started running down his left jaw, and I started to laugh at him, and then all of a sudden, I don't know what happened, I kindly got up, and with my napkin, I touched it, and I didn't realize he was half paralyzed.
Wow.
But he was in charge. And he was sweet enough to say, well, maybe you're in the wrong department. we'll put you in the wine department, and put me in the wine department with a master of wine at that time. His name was Colin Fenton, and that was my introduction.
Wow,
to
what
wine.
a story.
And so with that, like yourself, and as you have done with your broadcast, Paul, such a fascinating history with wine.
That's amazing.
And so I got totally wrapped up into that, and I thought, geez, I like this. And then when I came back to the States, I wanted to open up a little store, but had not really two nickels to rub together, but kind of talked my way into it, and was fortunate enough to have Dan Rowan and Dick Martin come in and said, well, we met you at Sotheby's. What are you doing?
The
here?
famed Roman Martin
The famed Roman
Laugh-In.
Laugh-In. And I said I would do a tasting for Dan Rowan at his home. And at that occasion, there was a group of people that were getting into wine, like Henry Singleton, who had started and was running Teledyne, was responsible for us getting to the moon, and had at that time I thought $1 zillion. And I very blatantly, I don't know where the nerve came from, said, well, guys, this should be an organization so that your little group should be able to buy wine at wholesale and be able to get the very best. And I should head that up. And of course, it very quickly turned into, well, why don't you open up a beautiful shop here in Beverly Hills?
Wow.
In which I said I would do it, but having to be a little arrogant and throw out conditions.
Oh, I wouldn't say arrogant.
I turned around and said, well, look, it's going to take a lot of money. And they said, well, we don't have a problem with that. And I said, well, listen, I know everyone has a problem when they're losing.
Eventually they'll have a problem.
Everyone loves Vegas up to the point.
Easy to say.
And they said, okay. And I said, well, and if it should be successful, I want to be able to buy you out within, if I have an option, I'd be able to buy you out within 5 years, just because I want them to think that I would try very hard.
Sure, right.
But it turned out to be true.
You bought them out.
We were very successful, and I can go on and tell stories about that, because the first year that, first Christmas we were opened, I remember we had so much business from so many celebrities. And one celebrity in particular had just got a new comedy show, and he was Bob Newhart.
Wow.
And he came and he says, look, I have 300 gifts to go out, and there's the A group and the B group, and the A group at the time was $1,000 a package, and the B group was $500.
You're talking about 70 something?
This was just 70.
Yeah.
Just 1970. And I said, I'm sorry, you're going to have to take your business somewhere else. Down the street, there's something called Von Dome, and a little further down is Steve Wallace. He had just started Wally's, and I said, you have to take it there. And he says, no. I want you to have the business. And he says, what did my wife say on the card? And it says, Happy Holidays. And he says, well, can you cross out holidays and put Easter, and then can you handle it?
Wow.
And so the gist of this story is that was a different time, when clients were very loyal, and they wanted only to do business with someone that they knew, like your father.
Loyalty in the wine, I think, first of all, that's a fascinating story, and I want to hear more, particularly the one about Dinah Shore. But how much has changed with the internet and Groupon and the coupons and you established clientele immediately on a very high level of respect for you and the things. I mean, just looking at the inventory here that we're sitting in this beautiful shop. I mean, this is the premium inventory of the world, and they must have trusted you greatly to provide the caliber of wine that their recipients of a gift. $1,000 a bottle in 1970 come on, that's a lot. How many wines were there like that? But they must have trusted you inherently to provide the level of service and quality that their recipients would expect from Bob Newhart or Roman or Dick Roman or
as I wish I could say it was for moi.
For moi.
but to put it doesn't take too long, even for those of us that are not that smart, to kind of recognize that birds of a feather will flock together, and I decided to select only the very best. And I mean, I feel it's a very, very special pleasure every day I walk past all of these first growths. I'm humbled.
Yes.
I am humbled by the
true.
fact that the owners, or should I call them the owners, the curators of that precious land, have been able to maintain a standard over hundreds of years, and that shows a very,
There's
very
something
respect.
There's something ethereal about that. There's something that validates what we do at its highest level. And I'm going to go back to like those days when my dad opened Palace Trees Wines and Spirits. I bought it in 1968 or 69, about the same time you started.
Oh, can I ask you real quick? Is he still with us?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, he's 92,
God.
and
And he's still working.
He still criticizes some of my selections. Yes, if you call that.
Don't say criticize him. Respect. He's got some wisdom with all those years.
That's true.
He recognized some things that made a lot of sense.
Actually, I will tell you that he reads what I write or one of the newsletters, and he'll call me and say, "Look, that was great," or "That was. I think you got to mention this. You got to talk about this." And you know, what you're saying is so important. Because his comments today, at 92 years old, having gone through the renaissance of California wine in the 70s and all through that, are right on today. In the realm of the wines that you see here. In other words, we're not talking about Groupon wines, $3, 15 wines for $45. We're not talking about that stuff. We're talking about the real things, the quality wines that are hundreds of years of tradition. His comments are right on today. And that means something to me because through all the millennials and all the things that happen in the world of beverages, and now they're drinking seltzers and flavored this and flavored that, the stability of these things exists still because of those stories and that history. So back then, and I was talking to Bruce Nyers, I'm sure you know Bruce.
Yes.
And we were talking, he says, well, I would load up my station wagon when I was a sales manager for Joseph Phelps, and this is what the sales manager did. He would load a station wagon full of wine, drive down to L.A. He'd stop at the Beverly Hills Wine Merchant. He'd stop at PV Wines and Spirits, the Duke of Bourbon, Wally's old location, and maybe one other wine. And that was the sales calls. That's a lot different than it was today.
No, but we bought everything.
You bought everything he had, right? He had to
yes.
leave with an empty station wagon, right? That was his job.
Yes. But there's probably only 3 dozen or 4 dozen wineries then.
At that time in Napa.
Yes.
So along comes, and by the way, I wanted to make sure you said this. Port, since it was your springboard into the wine business, and what a generous gesture by Westmoreland to do that for you, is the same beverage that Stephen Spurrier that piqued his interest in getting into this industry. It was a glass of Croft. I think it was 18 something.
You're kidding. I did not know that.
Yeah, that's the thing that spun him into I'm going to do this for a career. So that's I think that's interesting in itself. But
I ran into Stephen a few times, but I never really knew him other than just passing and
I had him on the show.
Well, that was special.
I wish I had read his book prior, because we talked about the Judgement of Paris. We had plenty to talk about. There's lots of things going on. But his story in his book, A World of Wine or A Life in Wine, I wish this is the first chapter. We could have spoken for an hour, because it's about what you're talking about. It's about the passion of wine and how you acquire it. It doesn't happen overnight. You learned it through Sotheby's, and then you came back and people respected you for what you knew. And that's what wine's about, in my opinion.
It's a continuing journey.
Yeah, you never know enough, right?
And you never, there's always, to me, thank God of the corkscrew, there's always another wine that you certainly want to try.
Yeah, exactly. So tell me, let's talk about that for a second. The clientele you had back in those days is the same style and probably caliber, let's call it, of clientele. And when you and I, we'll talk about the industry now with the internet and all that stuff in a minute, but I lost my train of thought. See, I'm not as young as you think. I'm not as think I am. Look,
I think it's you sipping on the crew.
So, which is wonderful.
It wants more attention than your thought.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I appreciate it because it does make you wander, doesn't it? The clientele in those days, is it the same as today, generally for you?
No, it's. I would say that it's completely changed. But as the old adage goes, the more it changes, the more it remains the same. Yes, it's in one time a celebrity clientele. They had money and they had curiosity, just like sports figures today. But today, I think they have gatekeepers that have an attitude that anything they do means they have to be reimbursed because it's an endorsement. Mm-hmm. Whereas at a different point in time, anything that a celebrity client did, the public wanted to sort of mimic, and they attached that celebrity was one that was seeking to improve themselves with further knowledge versus that.
That's an important.
It's a different attitude.
It's a very important comment, and my listeners are probably tired of hearing the
story.
story.
I don't know. Did I say that, or did I read it off the teleprompter?
yeah. Let me look around. No, because today's proliferation, and you've seen them 1,000 times, and I think it's so important for the wine consumer. And I was going to talk about this anyway, about what you'd recommend to a young wine consumer who wants to understand it, who wants to study it. And I've always said, you can study it as long as you want. You've been doing it for 40 years, 50 years. You've been studying this and you still don't know everything you want to know. And that's the beauty of the subject. And I any client of mine that wants to learn, they've got plenty of resources. I'm not going to force them into it, and they can stop wherever they want to stop. But they're barraged by these celebrity wines now. Now, you're talking about back in the day, if Bob Newhart was ordering these kinds of wines, you could say Bob Newhart ordered this Latour, and this is for his guests, and everybody's happy, and they're, oh, Bob Newhart liked it. But now they're endorsing and putting wines on the shelf. Snoop Dogg, for one, Cali Red. And the importance of a shop like yours, and I'm going to say like a business like mine, where I taste everything that comes through here, I understand what comes through here, and I'm only going to recommend the things that I think are valuable to the palate. Okay, to the consumer based on the price. But if you go to the market today and you look at the best part of the shelf at Ralph's or Vaughn's and it says Snoop Dogg's Cali Red, a consumer that doesn't know any better is going to be like, oh, it's Snoop Dogg's wine.
Yes.
And you take it home and it's sugared up, whatever, right?
Yes.
And it ends up on the bottom shelf. And here's a store like the Beverly Hills Wine Merchant. What is it? The Beverly Hills Wine Merchant, the Merchant of Beverly the Wine Merchant of Beverly Hills.
Whichever way
you want to go. Okay, good.
Wherever you want to put Beverly Hills, you can put Beverly Hills in front or behind, but the wine merchant is the wine merchant.
So you stand by this inventory, and I'm looking around going, wow, what inventory? And I think it's so important for a wine consumer who wants to learn and wants to understand and wants to sort of figure out this ethereal value of the drink you're talking about, needs somebody like you to say, I've tasted all this. These are the good ones. These are the ones that represent either history or pedigree or value or whatever it is that the customer's seeking. You're recommending that, and that gets lost on the internet. It gets lost with coupons. It gets lost with Groupon. It gets lost with the fact that I can buy an ad on Google for whatever I want to buy it for. And it seems to me that your clientele's like, Dennis, what do you think of this?
Well, Paul, I'd like to say this. I wish I could say that was the exact truth, but sometimes with a good proportion of my clientele that is coming in and seeking the very best, their knowledge is already there. And sometimes I am pressed to try to keep up with the knowledge of my clientele. And I love that because
that's amazing.
That lends myself to be able to sit down and pull the cork on the bottle and be able to have a real conversation. And I am absolutely astonished at the knowledge many of my clients know about
That's fascinating.
wine.
So what do you do?
I mean,
do you go back to the books?
Well, they will make me go back and re-verify a lot of things that have been discussed there. It was just like I was just up in Napa, as I was telling you before we started today, and going through Promontory, the property that Bill Harlan did with, and seeing the cask that they're all of a sudden now using old German cask.
Really?
That old oval, big shape.
Sure.
That I remember Brother
Redwood?
Timothy.
Oak or redwood?
It's oak, but Brother Timothy used to do the redwood at that old Greystone thing and walking through and saying, and I haven't seen anything like that in 50 years. And I see that. But I mean, it's the challenge of people coming back and telling you things, and then all of a sudden I'm curious. I got to go there and take a look.
No, that's fascinating
and so I do find that a lot of people that really, anyone that has more than 12 bottles of wine, to me, is a collector. Period. If you have 12 bottles of Jack Daniels, you're an alcoholic.
But 12 bottles of wine, you're a collector.
Of wine, I defy you. Define you as a collector.
I'm going to plagiarize that one too.
So,
but that's
what I see.
But that's an important thing because for instance, we were in Beaujolais. We visited Chateau de Jacques, and he's using brand new concrete eggs. The eggs have been around forever,
right?
But they're coming in vogue. In fact, at Krug and Napa, they're boasting the fact that they're experimenting with eggs. How about below ground amphora in Georgia? I mean, the places like this, and all of a sudden, our clients are reading about this. They come to us and say, "Hey, I've read this story," and we're like, "Well, gee, I haven't read that yet. I can't read everything," and so we go explore to find out what this conversation is about.
This is what I find, and it's interesting cultures. I mean, different clients that come through. I am just so fascinated with every time that we're dealing with Japanese clients.
Yeah,
boy, are they ever! And I don't want to use the word they, but it seems culturally that there is an investigation because of a couple thousand years of
history.
They're very interested in the why.
Don't tell my dad I drink Japanese gin now because he'll have a fit.
Oh my goodness! Listen, I'm totally shocked at the Japanese scotches.
Yeah, the scotches are really popular.
The Yamasakis and things. Yeah. Wow, where did that come? 25 years? Come on, it can't be 25 years. You must have learned that from Rudy or something.
They made it up.
Where did that number come from?
How did they learn that? You haven't had Scotch and barrel for 25 years. That's impossible. Who would know? But my dad's my dad grew up in Cairo, and it was an English protectorate then, and so he drank London dry gin, and I took him a bottle of this Japanese gin, which I think is very good. And he says, you can't drink that. You got to drink Gordon's, in the plastic 1.75. That's the only thing that's good.
So look, can I ask one thing real quick?
Sure.
Where did you develop your interest in wine? I love what you're doing right now. I'd rather be the interviewer than the interviewee.
Well, I appreciate the question. My aha moment, which yours was at Sotheby's with a glass of port, was not that long ago. It was probably 10 years ago where I started to realize, there's something very special about this, not just the business. I was a business guy. I grew up, I worked for Xerox, large corporation. I started a company with 5 other guys. We had nothing but a fishbowl of business cards and a 2-line phone. That's all we had. So I was business. And when Dad and I went to a Bordeaux tasting, you probably were there. It was probably 1988, and it was at the Beverly Center, the hotel. I forgot the name now. It's changed. Sofitel.
Okay.
It was 25 Bordeauxs. We got separated from the tasting. We were the last 2 into the door. And when we got in the car, we compared notes. And we have a very meatball surgery rating system. A 1, and I say this at disclosing to the vendors,